And now for our feature presentation.
He'll be fine on the mountain.
JB and Darren on the JB and Goldwater Show.
Line drive right field, base hit. South Carolina wins the College World Series.
Hudson, touchdown. Hunter Renfrow.
He got him, and it's all over. Coastal Carolina rules the roost. They win the championship. And South Carolina has won the national championship.
The Senegal baseball team has done it again, but this time the Bulldogs beat one of the top teams in the country. They are giant killers.
Get the ball to Bennett. He does.
Gamecocks are in the Final Four.
All right, greetings and a good Monday afternoon, and welcome aboard, and happy National Championship Monday, the JB and Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online, and very proudly presented by Motley Rice, causes not just cases, MotleyRice.com, driven by Stokes Volkswagen, StokesVW.com for your New Year's ride. Make sure you find us on social media at JB and Goldwater, and individually at Sports Media JB. And at Darren Goldwater. The Share Healthcare chat lines, they're open and available for you to chime in and be a part of our program today. A busy one as we kick off a gloomy Monday afternoon here in the Low Country, but certainly looking forward to tonight's final game of the college football season between Alabama and Georgia up there in Indianapolis. Speaking of which, Roger Hoover with the Alabama Sports Radio Network will pop in 1 hour. Is he in Indy yet, Darren, or is he still on the way? I know he was on the road.
He's on the way. He actually, ironically enough, was in Athens last night. I believe it was a Alabama women's basketball game. So he was on his way from Athens to Indianapolis and stopped in Kentucky after hitting a pothole and wrecking a tire. But he is on his way to Indy, and that's where we will talk to him.
Okay. All right. So he will join us today. We'll get the Alabama side of this because that's who I'm pulling for tonight. Against the Dogs. We're going to talk a lot about the game today. There's a lot of great prop bets out there. Darren probably knows much more about that than I do, so we'll dabble in some of that. Gene Sapakoff will wrap us up around 1:30 this afternoon with the Post and Courier. He, of course, will have plenty of thoughts on this game. And at 12:30, Wes Mitchell with Gamecock Central. Carolina had a good weekend on the recruiting front, and there is much more to come there over the coming weeks. A wild Sunday in the NFL. Everybody is still trying to figure out what in the world happened in that Chargers game. I was just talking to somebody on the phone about that. Great weekend for hoops as it pertains to the Gamecocks and the Clemson Tigers, both men and women for South Carolina as well. So there's a lot to get into today, Darren. I do see in the Share Healthcare chat lines, Clint ready to find out who that welcome home is, the second one from this weekend. I know who it is. I will tell you this, Clint. It's the one has already been announced. That's defensive end Terrell Dawkins from NC State, but he was the second welcome home. The first welcome home is not public yet, and certainly not going to say anything until that young man decides to let the world know. But he is a good one for the Gamecocks, which was it was a great weekend in Columbia and hosting prospects. We're going to get a lot of that coming up from Wes here in just a little bit. So, Darren, we're going to get into the national championship game clearly. All right. But I do want to give our state props, and I want to read all these names, okay? In the NFL playoffs, from the 49ers, 2 state players will be in the playoffs. Josh Norman from Coastal, Debo. Everybody knows Debo, right? Yes. Anybody see what he did yesterday? He's amazing. The Raiders, Hunter Renfrow, Brian Edwards, Cleveland Ferrell from Clemson, Keyshawn Nixon from South Carolina, and for Dorchester's and Clemson's, John Simpson, all on the roster for Vegas. The Bengals have T. Higgins on their roster, wide receiver out of Clemson, of course, Jackson Carman, lineman from Clemson, and DJ Reader, a defensive tackle formerly of the Tigers. The Chiefs have the Gamecocks, Rashad Fenton and Melvin Ingram on that roster. They also have linebacker Dorian O'Daniel out of Clemson. The Packers have the Tigers' former wide receiver stud Amari Rodgers in the postseason this year. The Bucs, of course, still have the same two they've had. Bradley Pinion, punter out of Clemson, and Ryan Suckup, former kicker for the Gamecocks, looking to go win another Super Bowl there. The Cowboys have Clemson's Jaron Kearse, South Carolina's Izzy Mukuamu, and Clemson's Carlos Watkins, defensive tackle. The Rams have Clemson former offensive lineman Tremaine Ankrum. The Cardinals have South Carolina State cornerback Antonio Hamilton and Clemson linebacker Isaiah Simmons. And the Eagles have South Carolina State's Javon Hargrave and Clemson's Kayvon Wallace, all former players in college football here in the Palmetto State, all in the playoffs. Pretty cool.
Pretty impressive. I had a first on Saturday. I actually put money on Clemson. I put money on South Carolina, and I put money on Penn State basketball, all three. And all three of them worked out. I had the Gamecocks and Clemson both to win. They were both underdogs. And I had Penn State in the points, and they lost by 7, and they were underdogs by 9.5. So a very, very good weekend on my part.
Yeah. So you're rich on this January 10th, Monday afternoon. All right. So let me just ask you, and let me see what your response is. I'm sure it's going to be very similar to the large majority of people. Why did the Chargers call timeout?
I don't have much of an issue with it. I mean, if they want to get their defensive personnel out there, but stopping the clock was not in their best interest. Well, I mean, I think that's clear. Is it why they lost? No, but was it a deciding factor in helping set up that game-winning field goal? Yeah, of course it was. But if he didn't feel comfortable that he had the defensive personnel that he needed out there, to call the timeout, make sure you got your guys out there.
Oh my God. Yeah, dude. Like, I mean, even afterwards, Derek Carr was like, yeah, totally changed what we were doing. I mean, they were literally just going to just run the clock out. They were going to the playoffs. It didn't matter. It didn't help at all. It hurt them. That was, oh my God. I mean, that was like horrible, especially after how they scored a touchdown as time expired. They threw a touchdown in the end zone to Mike Williams, former Clemson wide receiver. And you're thinking, wow, maybe the Chargers have rewritten the script here at the end of the game. Oh my God. When they called that timeout, Chris Collinsworth's reaction on TV was classic. I mean, I just thought, I was like, you're thinking what the rest of the country is thinking. What are you doing? What are you doing? That was unbelievable.
There were a lot of people rooting for a tie. I'll be honest, I was not watching at that point. I was long asleep by that point. But yeah. I think a lot of people were rooting for the tie. The fact that it was still on the table, that a tie put them, I guess it was on the table either way. A tie was going to put them both into the playoffs, and it would have been quite the odd thing to happen and have that Sunday end that way. But I think it's better the way that it actually did end. It's better to have a team winning going into the playoffs than some weird tie that sends two teams in.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have liked that. No, a tie that would absolutely not. I totally agree with you there. I would have been pretty frustrated by that. Mm-hmm. The Steelers obviously got in because there wasn't a tie and the Chargers lost. So for football's sake, yeah, I'm with you. But if you're a Chargers fan, you are, I mean, probably everybody's calling for his head, this Coach Staley's head out there, wherever they are, LA. I keep seeing San Diego still, but out there in LA, unbelievable. The postseason schedule sets up Saturday. The Bengals will host the Raiders at 4:30 on NBC from Paul Brown Stadium in Cincy, and New England is at Buffalo at 8:15 Saturday night. I can't wait to watch that. Buffalo, of course, is the former team of Pat DeMarco. We will have Pat DeMarco on our show at some point in time this week, and he will certainly preview that game amongst other things, talking about the Gamecocks and things of that nature. And then 3 set up on a Sunday: Philly at Tampa, San Fran at Dallas. That's going to be awesome. Old school 90s classic rivalry there. And Pittsburgh is at Kansas City. As a matter of fact, I like all of the matchups in the NFL this weekend, Darren. And then Monday night, you got Arizona at Los Angeles, and Monday Night Football's version of Wild Card Weekend. But the Packers will be home throughout the postseason. I found this note interesting, and then we'll move along here. They've got home field advantage. Good thing as the number 1 seed, because they are 8-0 at Lambeau Field this year. You got to like Green Bay's chances of getting into the Super Bowl.
Yeah, the playoffs in Green Bay are not where you want to be as a visiting team. I'm intrigued with the Steelers story. I don't think they have nearly enough to make even noise in the playoffs. Yeah. But the fact they backdoored in the way they A, won their game, B, the Colts fell on their face and allowed them the opportunity to get to the playoffs by winning the game. And now Roethlisberger's career is extended. So there, we talk about, bowl season and who's playing for more. The Steelers are playing for Ben Roethlisberger. How far can that actually carry them? I don't think very far, but I'll be paying attention.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm anxious to see what happens. Yeah, I like to watch the legends, and if this is the way that they go out, this is the way he goes out by making a run, that'd be awesome. If he doesn't, he still made the playoffs in his final season, more than likely. Doesn't look like he's probably going to have much of a chance to host a playoff game, but I guess crazy things have happened, so we'll kind of pay attention to that. South Carolina and Clemson, as you mentioned, Darren, both winning hoops this weekend. Carolina kind of shrugged off a generally very lackadaisical or poor performance in Nashville. They closed it out 72-70 over the Commodores, and it moved them up from 110 in the net rankings to 98. Now they slid back to 99, but they didn't lose that game. And because Vanderbilt had beaten Arkansas and it moved them up in the net rankings, believe it or not, where it stood at the time, which I don't think it does now because Vandy has fallen back to 79. At the time, it was a quad one win because Vanderbilt was in the top 75 in the net rankings. So that was a quad one victory. Now it's a quad two victory for Carolina. Funny how things have changed in the last week. At one point in time, that was only going to be a quad three opportunity for the Gamecocks, and it shifted. So really good win for them. And Clemson avoided a loss at NC State. They hold steady in the mid-50s. They're at 55 in the net rankings. Tigers at 10-5 per net ranking standards, 0-1 with quad one chances and 2-2 in the quad two opportunities there. Carolina has got 3 total wins, Darren, in the quad one, quad two opportunities, 0-2 with the quad ones and 3-0 in quad twos. UAB used to be a quad one. It's shifted back to a quad two right now. But overall, for both the Gamecocks and the Tigers on the road this weekend, good wins. And Carolina's got a huge, huge game tomorrow night in Knoxville. That would be a great chance to knock off a top. That'd be a quad one win no matter what happens as it stands right now with the Vols up there around 10.
Yeah, and depending on how the Vols finish out the year, I mean, they haven't been playing their best right now. But
no.
The way you just went through that is kind of why I don't pay attention too much to the quad victories right now. We still have 2 months to go, and it will change dramatically. I mean, so using it as a bit of perspective of, okay, kind of here's how, and that's what you're doing. But that's why I don't put a whole lot of stock into it. Because right now, that Vanderbilt win was better 2 days ago than it is right now. It's a good win for the Gamecocks because they went on the road. They won in a place they haven't won in or played well very often. And they still haven't lost back-to-back games all year long. That's something that is worth keeping an eye on as they go through a pretty tough SEC stretch here to begin the year now. So without having lost back-to-back games, their ability to play better following a loss, it's a testament to Martin. It's a testament to that staff. And it's been one consistent thing with a relatively inconsistent team.
Yeah. I mean, they've got Carol. Look, if they can get it put together, they're going to be okay. They have so many chances. Like I keep mentioning, the league helped South Carolina this year. Losses outside of like Georgia and maybe one other, I'm trying to remember who, aren't really going to kill you. And so they have so many chances to continue to advance their metrics rankings by playing in the SEC this year. It's right now it's the best league in the country. But and losses aren't going to be as bad as previous years. So, but they got to get some big wins coming up somewhere. Largely, they took care of their non-conference slate. Mm-hmm. So South Carolina, I actually think they're in a pretty good spot right now. They need to get 10 more wins. They got to find 10 more wins. They get to 20 because of the SEC this year. They're probably in. So we'll just have to keep an eye on it. But both of them, Gamecocks, Tigers, travel and win, which was great for both schools. Tonight is what we've all been waiting for, the national championship. The Dogs are 2.5-point favorites. I'm really looking forward to talking to Roger Hoover coming up at 105. He's a wonderful guest and he will be there tonight in attendance. Works for the Alabama Sports Radio Network, and certainly knows the program inside and out. Darren, it's hard to beat a good team twice in the same season, and that's kind of why a lot of people are – Georgia's 70-30 from what I understand up there as far as attendance goes. Dog fans have flocked to Indianapolis. I'm sure the state of Indiana cannot wait for them to leave. They're barking, I'm sure, all over the place and peeing on fire hydrants and stuff like that. But Bama whipped them in the SEC championship game. There's so many angles to look at this game. So many different angles. Here's one that I have. If everything was the same at Alabama, players, results, all that stuff, but it was a different head coach, I'd say I'm absolutely putting my money on Georgia. But Nick Saban's the head coach at Alabama, and that certainly gives me pause.
Yeah, that's my problem. I thought Georgia would beat them the first time. I still think Georgia is the better team. I think a lot of folks would agree that talent-wise, Georgia is the better team. But like we talked about last week, the edge at quarterback and the edge at head coach, it's on the Alabama side. We know that. The question I have, this isn't your typical, Alabama boat raced them. I mean, yeah, they won in convincing fashion. They're not that much better than Georgia. Things ended up getting away from Georgia. One note to keep in mind, this will be the 5th time that two teams will play twice in a season when they're both top 5, right? And the national championship is a rematch of the original one. In the first 4, the loser of the first one won the second one. So that, to me, is a relevant note because I think these teams are pretty close talent-wise, if not, like I said, Georgia having a slight edge. Do I go against what I said 2 weeks ago that I'm never, ever betting against Nick Saban again, or do I kind of stick with my gut? I think right now, I haven't done anything yet. I think I'm going Georgia because if I flip now and then Georgia wins and covers, I'm going to be much, much, much angrier than if I stick with Georgia and I'm just wrong.
52.5. The first half line is 26. The second half line is 26.5. If I was to take an over on either one of those, I'd go over the second half. I would not go over in the first half. Something tells me that, first of all, we could argue about who the top 10 is, but I can make an incredibly strong argument that Georgia has 3 of the top 10 defensive coordinators in college football on the same staff, and only one of them technically is the defensive coordinator, and that's Dan Lanning. But, I mean, if Will Muschamp is a defensive coordinator, Kirby Smart is a defensive coordinator, like these guys are the elite of the elite when it comes to defensive minds, and they have outstanding football players. So what you saw in Atlanta, again, I'm not a betting guy, but, dude, that ain't happening this week. That it's just not. Georgia's seen them. They're not going to come out and get punched in the face like that. Lower scoring in the first half, but I've got a feeling that something at halftime will change for both teams, and you'll see more points.
As you were going into that, I'm checking on where the money is right now. Earlier today, the money in terms of Alabama winning was slightly ahead of Georgia. Here it is. Yeah, the money is about 55% of the money in Vegas is on Alabama. 67% of the tickets. So a lot more people are betting for Alabama to win the game than they're actually putting their money on. And the under, heavily, the money coming in is 75% of the money is on the under in this game. And the reason why is what you just said. Is there going to be the fireworks show that we saw in that first game, which throws the props of the quarterbacks into play as well? Is Bryce Young going to throw for over, I think it's 312 or 315? What's his line at? I wrote it down. Bryce Young, what is he? 315 and a half. I think it's more likely that Stetson Bennett goes over 254. But I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. I'm not going to touch the under. I'm not going to touch the number because I want it to be over. I want to see the 2 best teams in college football throwing on some magical display of football. That's what I want. I don't want to see a slugfest with 2 defenses that are dominating the game just from an entertainment standpoint. So I'm pulling for the over, but I think it's going to be the under.
Yeah. I don't know. I just don't know. Bama's defense, for my money, in their last 3 ball games has been been pretty good. I mean, would they give up 22 against Auburn and 24? I know that against Georgia, and then 6 against Cincinnati. But they've been third down defense has been pretty good, really good. They've been opportunistic. They've been much more physical. It almost looked like they were just healthier. I'm not sure why. I don't know how many players they got back or something like that, if they even did. They had some better numbers earlier in the season, but then kind of hit a little stretch there, and it's like almost like they found their footing again. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, what's so intriguing about the game is a lot of our like go-to lines in college football. You almost throw them out the window because it is a rematch. And I mean, one of the great lines in the sport, and I agree with it. You use it often, Darren, and I use it a lot as well. I think is, well, who's got the better quarterback? Oh, mm-hmm. Bryce Young. Oh, then they're probably going to win. But they've already played, and again, there's this whole defensive aspect to the game with Georgia. I mean, they outside of the Bama game, boys and girls, they have been the elite of the elite in college football defensively. But it was the Bama game, and they got them again, and that's why I think that Bama ain't scoring. I will be. Darren, I, in the words of Clark Griswold, I think I've got a better chance of waking up with my head sewn to the carpet than then scoring 40 points. I'd be more shocked by that than them scoring 40 tonight.
Yeah, I'd be stunned if Alabama gets to 40. And I think when we talk about quarterbacks, like we all agree, Bryce Young is the bet. He's the Heisman Trophy winner, for God's sake. But in the conversation, the fact that Stetson Bennett is a good quarterback is lost. It is never even discussed because it's Stetson Bennett. And even to this day, people are having trouble wrapping their hands around the fact that this guy's the starting quarterback at Georgia. And it's not just that he's won the job and he's the best guy for the job right now. The entire team believes in him and has his back, and rightfully so, because he's performed to the level necessary. Is he Bryce Young? No, he's not. But is he perfectly capable of winning this game if he has to win it? If the ground game isn't as strong as it's been, because I think you can expect that they'll struggle to run the football maybe a little bit better than they did in the SEC championship. But Stetson Bennett's going to have to play well to win this game. I think it's reasonable to expect that he does play pretty well. Again, that's kind of why I'm leaning it's a lower scoring thing. And I am leaning. I'm still, the more we even talk about this, I'm leaning Georgia even more. I think that I just think it'll be hard to beat them twice. I think losing in that first game woke them up, right? It shouldn't have taken that. It shouldn't have taken an angry Alabama team to kind of push them around a little bit there. But I don't think they're going to get pushed around again. So I think it's a lower scoring game, and I think Georgia wins it.
Yeah, what's Kiffin say? Rat poison?
That's what Saban said. Yeah, that's after that SEC championship. Enjoyed that rat poison thrown around.
So much of that floating out there. I mean, Saban's just wherever his little team of dudes is, all those little dorks that sit in the back room somewhere, kind of compiling all the news articles. There, coach. Look, 8 out of 10 people are picking Georgia to win. Rat poison.
Yeah. See, and that's what's funny. Like the line, Georgia is the favorite. But I think most people are leaning Alabama, at least in terms of what I just read. I mean, we're 50, 60% in that range. So more people are at least leaning Alabama. He can use that in the locker room all he wants. Guys, no one's picking you. No one thinks you can do it. He can use it all he wants and try and convince his guys. The reality is it's pretty split. There's a good amount of people that think Alabama win this game, and it's Nick Saban is the reason.
Like, to Georgia's the favorite by 2.5 points. But doesn't it almost feel like they're the underdog?
Yeah. The way that this game is being talked about and framed, absolutely that's the way it feels.
Yeah. It absolutely feels like they're the underdog. They're the favorite. And I agree. I offensively, I like Alabama more. I not just because of Bryce Young. I mean, I saw somewhere in the Share Healthcare chat line, Craig's right. I mean, look, okay, John Minchie goes to, none of that even matters anymore. I mean, have we not paid attention? Craig, this isn't at you. I'm just saying in general. Have we not paid attention in the last 4 or 5 years? Doesn't matter. Alabama plugs this wide receiver in to replace that wide receiver. The system works. The players are all elite. They've recruited 5-star after 5-star after 5-star. They just plug the next running back in. All their offensive linemen. I mean, they're like their problems are like the first world problems of college football. I was listening to Barrett Jones this morning, who played at Alabama, and he's so even keeled when he speaks about him publicly. And he was like, man, you know, they've had some issues here and they've had some issues there. I'm like, yeah, oh my God. But the issues that you have would be not even close to an issue at 99% of schools in the country. All that being said, you know, I am a huge fan of Bill O'Brien, have been for a long time as just a coach. But Saban, Kiffin, Sark, O'Brien, I mean, you name it, plug them in, and it all continues to work, and they all have elite football players. So I like Georgia defensively. How could you not? It'd be nuts. But the best defensive player in the game, even though Jordan Davis is spectacular and Georgia's got, 3 or 4 guys that are probably going to be Hall of Famers in the NFL, is still Will Anderson. So Alabama, in my opinion, I think they have the best defensive player in the game, and they have the best offensive player in the game, and they have the better offensive coordinator. But overall, Georgia's got everything else. So, I don't know. I think tonight it has every reason to be a classic of a football game.
I hope. I mean, we frame classics with games that are entertaining, right? I mean, if it's like a 13-10 game or 20, maybe if we can push up into the 17-14, 2017, we can get into that classic talk. But if there isn't a lot of scoring, then it won't be in the classic range. It could end up being one of the all-time, defensive whatever. But even that would feel like a dud for both of these teams to come in and win some, some game that has 400 total yards of offense in it or something like that. But you just put a convincing argument out for Alabama, and that's why it's so hard to bet against them. It's not just Saban. They've got talent everywhere. What you were talking about replacing Mechie, they're going to be fine. Talent everywhere, coaching talent everywhere, advantage at quarterback. And yet I'm sitting here thinking Georgia wins the game like an idiot, thinking Georgia was going to win the last time too, and I'm still sticking right on that train. I
think Georgia needs a big-time defensive play, some type of turnover, some type of wild pick six. Bryce Young's going to have his day. I mean, he's going to go do what he does. He's not going to be 13 of 30 or something like that. I mean, he's going to complete passes. He's going to get his yards. But Georgia will need to – it'll be, Bryce Young, in my opinion, for Georgia to win, wow, Bryce Young was special. But that one play, that type of comment, at the end of the game where you go, man, Georgia won 27-23 because of a pick six that happened in the third quarter, and Bama just can never overcome it or something like that.
I'm curious to see how Bryce Young plays. I really am. The Heisman Trophy winner, when he gets to the biggest stage, the national championship, oftentimes doesn't play as well as he has throughout the year. I think he'll play better than that, but I just don't expect it to be at the level where he was in the first game. Not anything against him. It goes back to what we were talking about before. I think Georgia will play better defensively in this game, and it won't be as easy, even though it wasn't exactly easy the first time. He made some ridiculous throws. I don't think all of those throws drop down in the bucket tonight like they were doing in the SEC.
Yeah, Bryce Young threw for 421 yards in the SEC championship game. It was some kind of something. All right, it is time for a timeout. This weekend up in Columbia, South Carolina, Gamecocks picked up 2 commitments publicly. One of them is known. The other, we are awaiting him to publicly say who he is, so everybody can wrap their arms around him, whatever people do. Get excited about that stuff. So Wes Mitchell's going to pop in. We'll talk about the weekend that was in Gamecock recruiting, and we'll also get his thoughts on this game and much more. Hang tight. The JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen. We'll be right back.
This is Mike Mazzell for Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road. You know what happens when you sell record numbers of new vehicles? That's right. We take in record numbers of local trades. Despite what the news is saying, quality pre-owned vehicles really aren't that hard to find. You just need to know where to look. Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate and on the web at stokesvw.com. We've got over 1,200 pre-owned cars, trucks, SUVs, and all at a fraction of the price when new. Every vehicle has been inspected and reconditioned, many with the balance of factory warranty. Best of all, at Stokes Volkswagen, you don't need perfect credit to get approved for a quality pre-owned vehicle. And we'll take any trade in any condition, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. Don't forget, we'll buy your car even if you don't buy a car from us. You're going to love our pre-owned selection, I guarantee it. So come see us today at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate or stokesvw.com.
Peace and love at Stokes VW. Negative trade equity finance to new loan, subject to lender approval.
People don't like to get stuck in traffic, stuck in the mud, stuck at work, and two others you probably don't think much about: stuck with a big medical bill or stuck with a healthcare program that doesn't fit who you are. Experience true medical freedom with Share Healthcare. More affordable, more options, user-friendly, and biblically sound. You can join right now. Explore a new way to show you care with Share Healthcare. Join us today at sharehealthcare.com. sharehealthcare.com.
Wando Power Equipment, the trusted home of Hustler zero-turn residential and commercial mowers. There is nobody more trusted in South Carolina than our friends from Wando Power Equipment. They've been providing elite commercial and residential service for over 30 years. Landscape Services have turned to their selection of Hustler zero-turn mowers like the Raptor. Bigger, stronger, faster, and the most durable Raptor Hustler has ever designed. Located on Daniel Island and online at wandopower.com. Wando Power Equipment, owned by the Price family, the home of Hustler zero-turn mowers, rentals, service, and specializing in family and friendship.
You hear me talk about Dog and Duck all the time, and there's no other place I'm going to watch my college and NFL than the Dog and Duck. They have 3 locations: Bell Hall, Park West, and Clements Ferry Road. They have specials all football season long, like $12 pitchers of their own D2 brew, $5 pints of Sierra Nevada, weekly pick'em sheets with prizes, and the best wings in town, bar none. For all your football, college, and NFL, the Dog and Duck, Clements Ferry Road, Bell Hall, and Park West.
Motley Rice LLC is a law firm with international reach, but it hasn't lost its Carolina roots. The Motley Rice team fights every day for people harmed by products including asbestos and talc exposure, medical drugs and devices, and also catastrophic injuries and auto recalls, including dangerous Takata airbags. Motley Rice is headquartered in Mount Pleasant at 28 Bridgeside Boulevard. Visit motleyrice.com. Thank you, Motley Rice, for supporting the JB and Goldwater Show and the Big Gamecock Preview Show.
What's up, everybody? This is South Carolina singer-songwriter Patrick Davis, and I might live in Nashville, Tennessee now, but guess what? I can always keep up with the news back in South Carolina because I've got the JB and Goldwater Show. Thank you, JB and Darren, for being live, loud, and awesome.
All right, 12:33 Monday afternoon. Wes Mitchell will join us here in just a moment. We're going to actually have to pop him up today on the phone as he's got a couple of things going on. Carolina this weekend had a bunch of players in town, some really good ones as well. They landed a couple, and more news on the horizon, hopefully soon for South Carolina. Before we get Wes in here, I do see the Share Healthcare chat lines. I could answer some of these questions for you. Craig says, I think we get all 4 kids that were on campus this weekend. Craig, there's some pretty good feeling about that floating around Columbia, that they're in good shape with all those guys. Adam, do they have room for all 4? They do. Yes, they do. And they also have room for more than that. They can kind of spin some kids forward and things of that nature. There will be some defections in the future, as there always is in college football. But yes, South Carolina right now has room to take the notable names you've seen floating around out there in the transfer portal. But this guy knows a lot more than we do, and it's Wes Mitchell with Gamecock Central hopping in here at 12:34 on this national championship Monday afternoon. What's up, man?
Hey, what's up, guys? How we doing?
Good. Yeah, doing well. I saw the Duke's Mayo Bowl Twitter account is really good. Fact: Alabama has never won the Duke's Mayo Bowl. That's true. Can I get something off my chest? Can we? I love Super Bowl Sunday because it's traditional. And I love the national championship in college football. Who doesn't? I would venture a guess that it'd be easier to do this than move the Super Bowl. But why do we play college football on Saturday all season long and then decide that we want to play the most important game of the season on a Monday night? Anybody know that answer?
No, I agree with you.
It's crazy.
Well, I mean, I can tell you the answer. I don't know if it's a good answer, but the answer is that the NFL starts taking over Saturday at the end of their season, and nobody wants those two things to go against each other, is my guess, because the NFL is like the highest rated thing on TV out of everything. But me personally, I would love if the national championship, if you could do a 1:00 NFL game on Saturday, a 4:30 NFL game on Saturday, and then you could do the college football national championship at 8:00, 8:30 on Saturday.
Yeah,
I think everybody would be happy, but that's just me.
I absolutely, totally agree. I know in years past they were worried about ratings and this, that, and the other. Darren, you're a TV guy. You've been in TV your entire adult life. We all know that on a Saturday night, everybody be watching the game. I mean, people would plan their lives around the game, and they would all be watching. Monday night is not anything better for college football than Saturday night is. I don't understand. They need to fix that. And from a fan's perspective, I mean, I'm a fan who likes to follow my team into the postseason. It is much easier to say, okay, we're going to fly out or leave on a Friday night or Friday afternoon and be able to come home on Sunday than having to go take 2 or 3 days off during the work week to go wherever. But apparently the Dogs and the Tide fans, they don't care about that. They're especially Georgia. They've been barking their way up the what interstate is that, Darren? What runs up to Indianapolis? That's not 77. That goes to Ohio.
I'm not even sure, to be honest.
Well, whatever it is. There's been a bunch of –
There was a nice video circulating of cops were called on a bunch of Georgia fans in a restaurant because they kept calling them dogs in the restaurant.
Well, that's not surprising at all. No offense to Georgia fans out there, but come on, let's be serious. You know where they are. They bark at you for whatever reason.
Yeah, well, you get the cops called on you for that up there. Down here, that's called like a Tuesday. Yeah. I feel like.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's normal in Athens. You know, every restaurant, gas station, whatever.
Not acceptable in Big Ten country. No dogs allowed.
No.
Yeah. No, it's acceptable in Athens for whatever reason. All right, Wes, we'll get your thoughts on the national championship game, and maybe how about a prediction before we get out of here in just a little bit. But want to get caught up on the weekend. Carolina had elite players in town. Terrell Dawkins, defensive end, transfer from North Carolina State, has publicly announced that he's coming to South Carolina. I know that you're aware of who the other commitment is. He is not publicly announced, so we'll all be hush-hush about that for the time being. But overall, what's the vibe up there and how things went with all these young men considering coming to play for Carolina?
Yeah, I think it was a good end of the week last week for South Carolina to get those 4 guys in. Of course, like you said, Terrell Dawkins going ahead and going public. Then you have the 3 other guys, one that is already silently committed, and then of course will be going public at some point, relatively soon, especially when you consider these guys are early enrollees and are going to have to be figuring out where they're going to be in time to enroll for the January start of the semester. So I think it was a good weekend to maybe varying degrees. I think South Carolina has a strong shot really with all 4 guys. Obviously Dawkins is locked in, then the silent is pretty much locked in. The other 2, I wouldn't use the word lock yet because they've not committed yet. I think there's a possibility, maybe of some other visits for a couple of the guys, but for the most part, I mean, South Carolina, I think, is situating themselves in a place to fill some roles and get some instant impact guys in while they're at it, because this portal has really kind of become free agency, and you can almost think through the process that South Carolina is using. If you look at this last season, you look at the guys South Carolina is losing, and then you look at these guys they're sort of targeting in the portal, you can kind of see what they're thinking there as far as filling in some gaps on this roster.
Absolutely. Last year was more defensive minded when it came to the portal, Wes. This year it's much more offensive minded for South Carolina. How much of an impact, if there has been one, has Spencer Rattler had on some of these players now considering the Gamecocks?
Well, I think it's been big just from a perception standpoint for a guy like that to pick South Carolina. I would say the combination back-to-back of winning the bowl game, beating North Carolina. North Carolina is a program that really in the Southeast, to not be an SEC school, they just get a lot of attention from young kids. They're kind of a cool place to go right now, and South Carolina beats them pretty handily. You're talking about how the Mayo Bowl does such a good job on Twitter. As far as the major bowl games, the Mayo Bowl does as good a job as any of them out there at promoting itself and getting the word out. So I think Rattler plus the bowl, just the entirety of that situation, has given South Carolina, I would say, a boost, as far as attention from recruits and kind of being a place where kids are saying, man, this might be a fun place to go do something different at, like not just go to the traditional names out there. So I think Rattler helps just from an overall perception standpoint. I actually talked to Terrell Dawkins, who obviously is not an offensive guy, but he told me that it sort of clicked in his head, okay, Coach Beamer coached these two guys, Stogner and Rattler. He was Stogner's position coach, so Stogner was with him every single day. And if they want to follow him to South Carolina, then obviously they must have really liked the way he actually coached, being around him every single day. And his point was that when you go through the recruiting process, there's always a certain level of just BS that coaches are going to feed you. And it just caught his attention that, okay, Coach Beamer's coached these guys, and they're transferring across the country to now play for him. So I do think getting those two guys will prove to be massive for South Carolina. It's hard to actually quantify it, but it certainly has helped so far.
Wes Mitchell, Gamecock Central, 1242 on a Monday afternoon here on the JB and Goldwater show. Hey, Darren, the sun's coming out. I'll be John Brown. This is awesome. Speaking of Rattler, he didn't visit before he committed and signed with Carolina, but he did this weekend. How'd that go?
Mm-hmm. It went well, man. This was a part of the orientation process and just getting settled, figuring out where he's going to live, how things are going to work when he gets here. He said in that interview we did with him last week, he's like, there was all these rumors, but I literally never visited South Carolina. So this was his first chance to actually get out, see the facilities, see the city, meet some teammates. And it went well, man. Everything I've been told is that, this kid has come in with since he hit the portal, he's been, a humble attitude. He's had the right attitude. He's carried himself, extreme, kind of like professional in every way. So I think from the people that have interacted with him, they've just been very impressed because, obviously you had the QB1 stuff on Netflix when he was 17 years old. And, anytime a guy doesn't quite live up to the hype, all these rumors come out there, and he was such a nationally known kid for so long. There were questions about his attitude coming in, but everything I have heard from people that have interacted with him, they've been very impressed with the way he's carried himself, and he wants to come to South Carolina and sort of reinvent the perception of him, I think. So I think it's going to be one of those things that's obviously good for South Carolina, but it's a great opportunity for Spencer Rattler as well.
The other young men who have now I'm just talking transfers here, guys who have visited this weekend. I'll include Kobe Hudson, the wide receiver out of Auburn. I'll also include other transfers out there. I know there's a couple of names kind of behind the scenes being floated around. If they enter the portal, South Carolina more than likely is a destination in which they may land. But lumping all of those guys in together, guys who have visited, guys who haven't visited, just from a transfer standpoint, what type of timeline are we on here, Wes? I mean, you're talking about the second semester of the school year kind of getting underway now. So there's guys who might be committing. When can they commit and get enrolled in school and things of that nature? Do you have any of that type of information?
Yeah, I mean, as early as today, I believe is the short answer. You can make it work. Let's go back. Jason Brown, and EJ Jenkins. by the way, shout out Jason Barnes. He's an assistant coach at Georgia Military right now.
Yeah.
Jason Brown, and they got started in like March of last year. So I don't think that's ideal because you have to like cram a bunch of classes into that short semester, I guess. But it is possible if you have to. Ideally, I don't have the cutoff for this first semester in front of me, but that semester is starting like today. So I think for a lot of those guys, it would behoove them to go ahead and get settled and make a decision. So I would say if you want to talk like a broad timeline, probably the next week, you could see a good bit of movement, and then it's really quick from there. It's announced, and then literally, get your stuff going and get your stuff to Columbia. Because I told some of our subscribers on the message board, I'm like, it really set up pretty well for South Carolina with those guys this weekend going through orientation, because you're literally recruiting them, but you're kind of like, all right, if y'all just want to leave your suitcase at 650 Lincoln, we can go ahead and enroll you while you're here. Like it's that's really a good timing for them getting those 4 guys in from a standpoint of just the logistics of it.
Well, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of importance in this. I mean, if you're transferring in, you want to be able to go through spring practice. Like you don't really want to have to transfer in at the end of the semester and then go through your summer workouts after other transfers have already been in, after mid-year enrollees have already made their way to school and things of that nature, and then begin to actually kind of really learn the offense or the defense, whatever side of the ball you're on, come August, once coaches can start working with you. So there is a, hey, you might want to hurry this thing up type of attitude probably for all of these guys and whatever decision they make, whether it's South Carolina or somewhere else. But what I'm understanding here with you is even though classes have begun, there is still a little bit of a buffer period where kids can still enroll and they will still be eligible for the spring semester so they can go ahead and start working out with the football team.
Yeah, correct. There is
okay.
Right. Even without getting into that like March mini semester, whatever that thing was, that half semester, I think, even without getting into that territory, there is a little bit of a buffer at the beginning where you can still enroll in basically the entirety of the semester, and you'd just be making it. If you missed work at the beginning, you'd be making it up. But there is like a drop dead cutoff date somewhere along the way that would basically be the last moment that you could move in. But yeah, there is a buffer period. I think that's a great word for it there for these guys. And yeah, man, to your point, I mean, if you're already in the portal there, which obviously all these guys are, there's really no point in waiting to enroll until the summer. Like, let's be honest, you're not going to get the workouts in back at home that you would in a college strength and conditioning program. And you're certainly not going to learn the offense or defense to the extent that you need to, at home or on Zoom or whatever it may be. So if you're in the portal, you need to go through spring practice. Now, certainly, there will be guys out there that will hit the portal after their spring practices, we know. And, those guys, if it's an elite player, if you're South Carolina, are you going to say, nah, we don't want you? Of course not. You'll still take them. But the way things are right now, if somebody's already in the portal, I think on all sides, you're saying, let's get this person in for spring practice and let them go ahead and learn the offense or learn the defense. Because that's really, spring practice is when you learn this stuff. Once you get into preseason, so much, there's a certain date where you're on game plan week, like you're getting ready for a game, not learning the broad parts of the scheme. So I think for a lot of these guys, it's key for them to get in for spring practice.
All right, 12:50 here, Wes. I'm going to kind of throw these names at you. Just a brief, quick synopsis on each one and what they might mean in your opinion to the football program, and then we'll get an update from you on this assistant coaching search and a championship prediction to let you run. But we'll start with Terrell Dawkins. I mean, he's already committed to the Gamecocks. He I believe he led NC State in sacks his freshman year with 4.5. And then this year, I think, am I correct in this? He had a couple of bang-ups that kind of put him a little bit behind the 8 ball in the depth chart. Didn't maybe have the season that he wanted to have. So what type of prospect is he, and how will he help South Carolina immediately?
Yeah, he actually led all ACC freshmen his redshirt freshman season in sacks, and had some off-season injuries going into last year, and they actually moved to a 3-man front. And not to get too deep in the weeds, but obviously, like, when you're in a 3-man front, you're wanting bigger guys. They're having a little bit more against the run, playing like a 4 technique role where you're having to hold up against double teams at times, and that's not really his game. He is a true edge, like 4-3, 4-2-5, 4-man front defensive end. And so I think he wasn't necessarily the best scheme fit this past season. That's part of the reason he left, and should be a great scheme fit for South Carolina. I think he comes in, he's a twitchy guy. He can rush the passer. I think probably at the very least, he is kind of the next guy there behind Jordan Strong and Jordan Birch. At the most, he's like pushing those guys for a possible starting position.
Wow. Twitchy. I like that word, twitchy. What about it's a great word. What about the young man from Central Michigan, Devonnie Reed, safety? I've watched some film on him, Wes. He's a special player. I'm almost surprised. Isn't he eligible to be in the draft? Why is he not declared for the NFL draft? This kid can play. How could he help the Gamecocks?
I don't know, man. Maybe my guy just loves college football, and I haven't talked directly to him, but I think looking at South Carolina. By the way, sorry, I'm getting distracted here, y'all. Shane Beamer just tweeted a welcome home.
Yeah, our chat room is blowing up with it too.
Someone else has gone public, but I was sitting here, my phone was the whole time I was trying to talk. So so another welcome home is in, but Reed, if you look at the loss of Jalen Foster, and then you start looking at the safety position, you quickly are like, wait a second, they do need a guy at safety who can play right away. And Reed was uber productive. Like, this was a guy that, played 4 full years, very experienced. I think he slides right in as a starter at safety. This allows that big class of what were all highly recruited defensive backs to just, not be forced directly into action. So I know, when South Carolina offered him, there were a couple of our fans on the board that were like, do we need a safety? And I was like, if you really dive into this thing, yes. And, Jalen Foster ended up being so big for that defense this year. Not saying Reed's going to come in and be an All-American. That's not fair. But I think he can come in and be just a really solid contributor that should fit what they're trying to do on this defense.
How about the wide receivers? Kobe Hudson from Auburn. I know he was not in this weekend. And then the young man from James Madison, who is, I don't know if anybody realized this. He's technically just finished his freshman year because 2020 was a given for him. But basically, he's in the top 10 of every all-time receiving mark ever at James Madison. He was there for about a year and a half, and he can flat out play, and everybody wants him. These two young men trending heavily to the Gamecocks. I think we all know, Wes, but just a quick synopsis there on how they could help sooner than later for Carolina's offense.
Yeah, Kobe Hudson was Auburn's leading receiver this past year. Just a bona fide playmaker, man. This guy. Let's talk about it. Just if you could add this duo, which it's not a lot that's going to happen, but I think South Carolina has situated themselves. They've worked really hard to situate themselves in a decent spot with both those guys. And then Antoine Wells Jr. is basically the best receiver, maybe the best player on one of the best teams in FCS. Not only, as you said, is he a career top 10, top 5 guy in several categories already for James Madison, but he also is like top, I think I went and looked, guys. He's like top 5 in every single receiving category in all of FCS this past season. So Just a stat stuffer is what I would call him. This guy just makes plays and is very consistent. I think Kobe Hudson probably a little bit more flashy. Probably gonna, if they were to add both these guys, he's gonna make some big plays for you. He's gonna make some one-handed grabs for you. But Wells is the guy that's just gonna go out there and at the end of the game, you're gonna be like, dang, he caught 7 passes for 97 yards and a touchdown, and and that was just a walk in the park for him.
Yeah, just needs 3 more yards, and then everybody pays attention. And finally,
I left short of the 100 there.
yeah. But that's the point you're making. That's the point you're making. It's like, wow, wait a second, the guy had 97 yards, in a touchdown. That's people. You hit 100, everybody notices. You hit 97. Oh, 97, no big deal. And then finally, the running back from Wake Forest. I mean, he clearly we know the answer. I mean, they need running back depth. But Wes, I would also caution everybody, don't write off Rashad Amos. I like this kid. He's good. And he's a big time back who runs downhill. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Corey Boyd in different ways. But your thoughts on the young man from Wake who's led the Demon Deacons in rushing the last 2 years?
Yeah, man, he's kind of a workhorse guy, I think. And I don't think he's necessarily that flashy either, but I think he kind of reminds me a little bit. He's like the offensive version of what I said about Devonnie Reed on the defensive side. Very experienced, very productive, runs hard, runs with balance, toughness, veteran kid, mature kid, probably isn't quite, on the Z White level, I think, as far as like pure playmaking ability, but it is going to be the guy that comes in and, could be your feature back. Obviously has been used to splitting time. So you look at him, you look at Lloyd, you look at Juju McDowell, and then, as you said, Rashad Amos. Now, if they get him, you have 4 scholarship guys that I think you could probably count on all of them. And, it's another North Carolina kid, state of North Carolina kid. They added Dawkins from the state of North Carolina. That's they got to keep chipping away at that state, man. I think that's there's some extra value there in chipping away in the portal with some guys from that state. I think the next couple of years, when y'all ask me about recruits, I need to be talking about the Gamecocks being in good shape with some guys from that state, because I think it's very important for them moving forward.
Wes, again, Shane Beamer has tweeted out, welcome home. And I'm pretty sure you probably know who it is by now, which I have just learned of who it is. So we're obviously not going to talk about that. This young man will be announcing. I just saw your boy, Mr. Clark, post as well that everybody just hang tight for a little bit. Gamecock Central will be respecting this young man's wishes to announce it on his own, but it will probably be a good one for Carolina fans. Finally, any update on the assistant coaching search and who wins tonight?
Yeah. So Chris Clark has a great update on GamecockCentral.com for subscribers. I'll try not to steal his thunder too much.
Okay.
I think there was some movement as far as talking to some guys, interview some guys as far as Beamer goes this past weekend. That thing's moving right on along. I would imagine. I think fans will be excited about some of the names that we've got out there on Gamecock Central. And as far as the game tonight, I just can't go against Saban, y'all. It's
hear you.
Why people would bet against Nick Saban, I'll never know. It is going to be difficult to just beat them twice back to back. I think Georgia will have some adjustments, certainly, but Nick Saban he's the guy right now. So if I was a betting man, there's no way on this planet I'm putting my money against Nick Saban. It's kind of like Tom Brady. I'm not putting my money against Tom Brady. I'm not putting my money against Nick Saban.
I agree. I told Darren earlier, I said, look, if everything was the same for Alabama, every stat, every result, every player, nothing literally in that program was anything different, except Nick Saban wasn't their head coach. Just swap the head coaches for that matter. Put Kirby Smart on the Bama sideline and Saban on the Georgia sideline. I would take Georgia. I would not take Alabama, even though I love Bryce Young and Will Anderson and those players. But Nick Saban is on that sideline. It is so hard to go against him. So we'll see. We'll see if you're right. I tend to agree with what you think. Wes, I know you got work to do, man. I have not had a chance to watch The Kick just yet as part of the Garnet Trust Gamecock Central collaboration, if you will, with Parker White. But that is up on your website. So for those that haven't seen it yet, I would encourage you at 2:00 when we're off the air, of course, to go watch that. And certainly keep an eye on Wes and Chris as the new welcome home is set to be revealed here before long. The third one in the last couple of days for Shane Beamer and the Gamecocks. It's another transfer and probably going to be good news for Gamecock football. Great report as always, Wes. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful week. Enjoy the ball game tonight.
Hey, thanks, guys. You'll have a good one, okay?
Later, man. Sir. There you go, Wes Mitchell. 101. I just saw 101 p.m. Eastern. I just saw Roger Hoover with an update 2 minutes ago. He is outside of Lucas Oil Stadium, and he joins us next right here on the JB and Goldwater Show. In our backyard is Motley Rice LLC, a law firm that hasn't lost its Carolina roots. The Motley Rice team fights every day for South Carolinians who were injured while traveling by plane or bus, harmed by medical drugs and devices, or burdened by dangerous auto recalls, including Takata airbags. Motley Rice is headquartered in Mount Pleasant at 28 Bridgeside Boulevard. We are honored to have Motley Rice as a sponsor for the JB and Goldwater Show and the Big Gamecock Preview Show.
At Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum, families walk in the footsteps of our nation's heroes, the brave ones who risked their lives to defend our way of life. Home to the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, and the USS Clamagore, there's more than 1 million square feet of exhibit space to roam. White Glove certified, we have several new health safety measures in place to enhance the visitor experience. Come for the day and leave feeling inspired. One of the most impressive museums in the country, located right here in Mount Pleasant. Visit patriotspoint.org for more. We'll see you soon.
People don't like to get stuck in traffic, stuck in the mud, stuck at work, and two others you probably don't think much about, stuck with a big medical bill or stuck with a healthcare program that doesn't fit who you are. Experience true medical freedom with Share Healthcare. More affordable, more options, user-friendly, and biblically sound. You can join right now. Explore a new way to show you care with Share Healthcare. Join us today at sharehealthcare.com. sharehealthcare.com.
This is Scott Glaze, head golf professional at the Links at Stono Ferry, located on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina. I'm inviting you to tee it up on one of the most scenic and challenging courses in the Lowcountry. Our back nine is highlighted with 3 holes that border the Intercoastal Waterway. Visit stonoferrygolf.com to book tee times and discover all that Stono Ferry has to offer. The Links at Stono Ferry is a former South Carolina Golf Course of the Year and is also home to the College of Charleston men's and women's golf teams. Come see us. We would love to have you. stonoferrygolf.com.
Family vacations, a new car, a new boat, all cost money, but you don't necessarily have to make more to afford any of that if you can save cash that's flying out the window now. iHelp Consulting can help you finally get the kids to Disney World, upgrade the minivan, or drop that new boat in the water next summer. Let Daniel and iHelp Consulting consult with you. No fees, just savings. You pay them a percentage of those savings. Save on essential services, credit card fees, you name it. Let them find it. These folks are incredible. iHelpConsulting.com. How can I help you?
Hi, I'm Chris Half, Public Information Officer at the Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum. We're home of the mighty USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, Clamagore, and Vietnam experience. And we're a proud partner of the JB and Goldwater Show. We invite you and your family to come see us and enjoy a day on Charleston Harbor. Visit patriotspoint.org for more information. And now, it is my honor to present the National Anthem.
live, loud, and online.
All right, final hour on this national championship Monday afternoon. Welcome back, the JB and Goldwater show, very proudly presented by Motley Rice and driven by Stokes Volkswagen. Make sure you head to jbandgoldwatershow.com for more on us, and follow us, of course, on social media at JB and Goldwater, individually at Sports Media JB and at Darren Goldwater. Thanks to Wes Mitchell with Gamecock Central for popping in that last segment. Good timing, of course. Mondays at 12:30. He's always here. I guess Beamer probably knew that. That's why he went ahead and tweeted out the welcome home for Carolina football. We do have Gene Sapakoff coming up here in just a little bit, but neither one of those two gentlemen are like this gentleman who is on site now in Indianapolis for tonight's national championship ball game between the Crimson Tide of Alabama and the Georgia Bulldogs. It's Roger Hoover, broadcaster for the Alabama Crimson Tide Sports Radio Network. And first and foremost, Roger, I just saw on Twitter that you just arrived to Lucas Oil, so congratulations, because from what I understand, it's been a rough trip. Did you get a flat tire somewhere along the way?
Did I not punch him through? Yeah, I did.
You
know what? Yeah, let me call him back.
Do I need to rehearse that and do that again? Write that down.
Such a brilliant intro, and no, just nothing.
Make sure I not jot all this down here, and we'll get him back in, and then I can say that again. I can remind him of what an experience it was to hit the road. Okay, everybody, hang tight. Roger will be here in just a minute, joining us from Lucas Oil Stadium, where the Tide and the Dogs will go tonight. 2.5-point favorites are Georgia over Alabama. If you're in the state of South Carolina and you're not a Georgia fan, which we do realize many of them venture over this way, it's impossible to think that Clemson or Carolina fans anywhere are actually polling for Georgia to win this thing. Speaking of Georgia fans, they're all over the place up there, and Roger Hoover joins us now. Roger, hopefully you've got your waders on. Those Dog fans, they'll pee on your leg now. Careful.
I hear him there.
Yeah, there he is. Can you hear us?
No, he hung up on us.
I'm not going to come up with a third intro for Roger.
No,
Hoover, so
I don't.
Next time it's just going to be, hey, how are you? At 1:08 on this Monday afternoon. I will add, just out of selfishness here, I'm glad that it's gotten cold again, because I'm so much looking forward to just sitting in my recliner tonight with the fire on to watch this game. Like, I was really hoping it wasn't going to be like 75 degrees in January where I had to have the doors and windows open and things of that nature and the AC on or something like that for the national championship game, because obviously it was pretty hot around here.
I've discovered the problem. I was calling the wrong number.
Oh.
I am now calling the right number, and you can try your intro to Roger for a third time. He is on the phone.
I've rehearsed too much. Hey, Roger.
Hey, guys, I've actually heard your intro twice, because I pulled up the Twitter feed just a moment ago, had it playing through my car, and I was like, wait a second, I haven't been called yet. Now we are finally connected, my friends, in my favorite place in the world, the low country of South Carolina.
Well,
that's on me. I should call the right number when I'm trying to call people.
Some guy just answered the phone and was like, this guy's talking about someone peeing on somebody's leg? Who the hell just buzzed me? If he knows anything about dog fans, he'll know exactly what I'm referencing. All right. Well, we know you're there. We saw it on the internet. So you got a flat tire? What happened?
Yes. So interestingly enough, the SEC decided the day before the national championship game in football, it would be a great women's basketball matchup, Alabama at Georgia. So at this time yesterday, I was in Athens, Georgia, surrounded by Dog fans. I did have my national championship ring from last year that I was proudly flashing around Segment Coliseum. So I had to make the trip after Alabama lost to Georgia in that game. Had a trip that was going just fine, made it through Atlanta, through Chattanooga, through Nashville, and then about 30 miles north of Nashville, going on I-65 north, hit the largest pothole ever in my life. That was very unavoidable in the right-hand lane when I was on cruise control at 70 miles per hour, and I flat tire right after that, and luckily was helped by the local police station there. Police officers in Millersville, Tennessee, helped me get my spare on. I was able to go a little bit further to Bowling Green. Got up this morning. The great people at the Bowling Green Walmart Automotive Center got me a new tire, and I'm on the road and now in my parking garage just outside the Marriott Hotel and getting ready for this game tonight. So it's been a whirlwind, but it's all part of the fun that we have traveling to keep up with Alabama sports and all sports in general.
Roger, there's a bunch of people that have already made predictions on here, and rightfully so. You know, how are you going to pick against the best coach? How can you ever bet against Nick Saban? But JB, what Roger said to me earlier today, it's not really Saban. He came on this show last year before the national championship. So he's coming on this show today before the national championship. If that's going to affect how you're going to use your money.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
It just feels comfortable. It wouldn't be right winning a national championship without hanging out with JB and Goldwater.
Yeah, dude, this is becoming such a tradition. I'll tell you what here, Roger, on behalf of Gamecock fans all across the state of South Carolina, which 9.99 out of 10 are pulling for the Tide to win in this. When South Carolina's in the national championship next year, you have us on your show.
Yeah, that's a good call. I like that. I like it. Alabama. I mean, Alabama, Georgia, we've seen this plenty, but if we could see Alabama versus South Carolina in Atlanta and then again in the national championship game, sign me up now, as long as no mayonnaise is involved.
Yeah.
I'm definitely afraid of mayonnaise.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Well, we're glad that you're there. We're glad that everything's good. You're obviously, Bama inside and out, and we know that Georgia people don't like Alabama folks, but Tennessee folks don't like Alabama either. So I'm glad that the officers in the state of Tennessee were happy to help you get moving along in just north of the border there. Roger, I'm going to ask you a very easy question with a very complicated answer. We all know what happened in the SEC championship game. The Tide rolled Georgia. It was almost embarrassing of sorts for the Dogs, who had been so elite all year. And Alabama walked in with no fear, as they always do, and did what they generally do, and that's beat whoever the hell they're playing, beat the crap out of them. So how do you beat Alabama? I mean, they did lose one game this year. It was at Texas A&M. There wasn't a whole lot flashy about the Aggies that day if you go back and look at the stat line. But if Georgia wants to beat Alabama, how do they do it?
The main thing is they have to not only pressure Bryce Young. I think that's going to be one of the big narratives that a lot of people are going to talk about. You have to pressure him, but he's so good at making off-balance throws and coming up with something out of nothing. The main thing you have to do is sack him. You have got to put him on the ground. And I tell you, the teams that did a really good job of that, A&M had some success, but most notably Auburn for the first 59 minutes of that football game did a wonderful job getting to Bryce Young and bringing him down to the ground a lot. LSU, Arkansas had some pressure on him, but nobody quite like Auburn. And then a week later, Alabama's offensive line plays its best game of the year against arguably the best defensive line they faced all season, now gets to face again in Georgia. So for Georgia, is more than anything, you got to finish the play when you're on defense against Alabama, because if you give Bryce Young just a third of a second more to make a good throw or simply throw the football away, he's going to do that. He has shown that time and again this season. So that's one part of it, I feel like. And then for Georgia, they have to be balanced offensively. You cannot rely on the passing attack, even though they've got a lot of good weapons. They've got to be able to run the football a little more against Alabama, especially on first down and second down. I think this game is going to come down to whether or not Stetson Bennett will have success on third and long. In the last ball game, and even going back to the matchup in 2020 in Tuscaloosa, that's where he got in trouble. That's when he was susceptible to the interceptions or throwing into triple coverage. All of a sudden, there's a pass breakup. He didn't make as many great decisions on third and long. So it's critical for Georgia to move the ball forward on first and second down. You want third and 3. You don't want third and 9 each and every time you have the football. So I think that's going to be a big key for Georgia. Can they run against Alabama? The Crimson Tide have done a good job kind of against the run and the pass on defense this year. But if I'm Georgia, I try to run the football more, because there are going to be moments in this game when you know you're going to have to throw. But if you can make it just a little bit easier, I think that would be the path to success for Georgia. But can they do those two things? I'm not sure.
What adjustments should we expect from Alabama? The majority of the breakdown is what adjustments are we going to see from Georgia? How will Georgia sustain what they did early on in that game? How will Georgia play better? But Alabama's going to adjust too. Otherwise, they're going to lose this game. So what adjustments should we see from the Tide?
I think the Crimson Tide are going to run the ball more. I think Brian Robinson had such a good game against Cincinnati, and you felt like that was a matchup where the Crimson Tide could run kind of with that 3-3-5 stack defense that Cincinnati had. Georgia won't have that as much, but I feel like Brian Robinson gained a ton of confidence, and he's truly fully healthy. He's kind of a month removed from all the health problems that he had going back to the Auburn games, and now I feel like he's going to be playing at his best, and he looked really good even when we were kind of wondering would he play or not against Georgia a month ago. He had a pretty good ball game, and I think today he needs to step up in a big way for the Crimson Tide, not just running the football, but also in the passing attack. And then defensively, I think you're going to see Alabama be as aggressive as can be today in terms of blitzing the quarterback and finding ways to make Stetson Bennett uncomfortable.
Roger, I don't know if you've done any research on this, but is there any history out there of, at least in the Saban era of teams that Alabama has faced twice in the same season and how they fared against them in those matchups?
I think really the only time is that championship game against LSU, and that was a rematch where Alabama had revenge on its mind. So it is something that is different. But, Coach Saban's been talking about his NFL experience, whether he was the defensive coordinator of the Browns, head coach of the Dolphins. You look at, a lot of times you would go 0-2 against one of your division rivals. A lot of times you would go 2-0. I think he referenced there was one year when he was in Cleveland, they lost to the Pittsburgh Steelers twice in the regular season and again in the playoffs. Yeah. So, I think he's kind of approaching all of this rematch talk kind of just from that NFL mindset of, it's not going to be dramatically different for either team. It's the same personnel. Now it's just, okay, let's think through all the different wrinkles that these teams can throw at each other. And that's the beauty of how Alabama's staff and even Georgia's staff is set up as well. I mean, they have so many analysts along with the assistant coaches. They've been working on this stuff for weeks and possibly months, knowing that this could be a very real possibility that Alabama could have to play Georgia twice. And I imagine the same thing on the Georgia side. I think these coaching staffs have done a remarkable job getting ready for this moment and anticipating what wrinkles and what changes we are going to see tonight, because there will be some on both sides of the ball for both teams.
Could not agree more. I think Darren's question was actually a great question, because the typical thought process with the public is, well, gosh, Georgia's got to figure out how to stop Alabama, or they've got to figure out how to adjust and this, that, and the other. That's something that Saban knows. I mean, he knows that they're going to make those changes. I mean, my God, he groomed the two of the guys. I know Dan Lanning calls the plays, Roger, but let's all be honest, right? Will Muschamp and Kirby Smart have a lot of influence on what happens over there on the defensive side of the football. So when you talk about chess matches and stuff, like if we could have, anybody that's not an SEC fan, get that out of your mind for a second. Literally, if you could have drawn up two programs to have the ultimate chess match in a national championship game, these would be the two. There's nobody else where they're going to cross as many paths as these two have, Roger. And over the years, Saban has had some pretty darn good success against guys who used to coach underneath him, but I don't know that any of that will be much of an effect tonight. I mean, it's a national championship. It's about the players.
It is about the players, and I think both sides are going to execute well at different points of the ball game. You just have to wonder, again, if that lingering thought is there for Georgia of how the last game went, and you can use revenge as a motivating factor. Coach Saban has even talked about that, but I think deep down, this is a group that hasn't had to come back and win a lot of the ball games they were able to win throughout the season. And Coach Saban made the point as well that Alabama's had to fight through a lot of adversity this season, losing that one game in Texas A&M, yes, but there are a lot of games Alabama just did not play well. Just were not much was working right. I think back to the Tennessee game, LSU, Arkansas are really the big three that come to mind, and that's not even to factor in the comeback against Auburn when it completely looked like a loss. Going away in that ball game with only a minute left to go and you're down 10-3. So I think this is a group that has learned to fight and claw, and I think that'll be to Alabama's advantage if this is a tight ball game in the fourth quarter, because we truly haven't seen Georgia play either from behind or try to hold on to a tight lead late in a ball game like this. It's usually just been Georgia comes out strong and rides the momentum of that to a victory, or gets out to a 10-0 lead. Alabama comes back and looks really sharp in the SEC championship after that. So Coach Saban also closed out his radio show on Saturday night on our network saying, if you're going to be in a fight with some kid that's on the school bus, it's to your advantage to know when you get that door opens, you're ready to throw that punch. So I think he has been emphasizing getting off to a fast start is going to be critical for Alabama, because that's something the Crimson Tide did not do in the last ball game against Georgia.
I mean, if there was ever a bigger bottle of rat poison than this week, Roger, I don't know that I've seen it. Right? I mean, if Bama's a dog in the game. 7 out of 10 people out there are predicting Georgia to win it. It's hard to beat a team twice. Everything you've already said, all that stuff. I mean, who are the little gurus that Nick's got in some little corner of a room somewhere, just feeding all this junk off the internet into one big book, and he's going to read it before the game, and then they just run out there all fired up and ready to go?
He's got a lot on staff for that. You talk about all the analysts and assistant coaches. There are plenty of people that continue to mine Twitter for some of those things and make sure that the players know kind of what that rat poison is out there. And it seems like a very motivated group that's here in Indianapolis, and they've been having some good practices. And, I think for a lot of players as well, I think a lot of the pressure has been off these guys ever since the Auburn game. Just the way they were able to come back in that ball game, knowing that, okay, all of their goals are still in front of them, because let's face it, if they lose to Auburn, even with a win against Georgia next week, I'm not guaranteeing that Alabama would have had a shot at the playoff. They may have snuck in as a 4th seed. But I think once they were able to get that done, get the win against Georgia, and now they've gotten to enjoy award season. Some of these guys know their NFL future is very close by. I think the pressure's been off on a lot of these players from some of those outside things that can get to them. And, most of these key players already have a national championship ring from a year ago. Now, maybe they didn't have as large a role playing in that game, but they know what it's like to be a champion. Now it's just focusing on the Nick Saban process of play the next play, do your job. And I think we're going to see a lot of that tonight, especially early.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Roger Hoover joining us from right outside of Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis with the Alabama. We'll just summarize this: the Alabama Sports Radio Network. Roger, you see him on TV, you hear him on the radio. He's a legend in the Yellowhammer State. Roger, I mentioned to Darren earlier, and I actually see a couple of questions in our Share Healthcare chat lines about this, kind of where I was going next. So good for you, Craig, and guys like y'all. But I mentioned to Darren earlier, it never seems to matter anymore at Bama. If they lose the best receiver in the country who wins the Heisman Trophy and goes to the NFL, they plug in the next guy. He gets hurt. Okay, you plug in the next guy. You plug in the next guy. You plug in the next guy. I mean, they just have dudes. But I in the research that I've done, in the small amount of research I've done, something tells me that tonight, outside of Jamison Williams, that Jaleel Billingsley could have a big day in the national championship game. Have you gotten that feel? And if so, why? He's a hell of a target. We know he's a great football player, but what is it about Jaleel Billingsley that could lead him to having a big night for the Tide?
I think it's his size, the fact that he is a true hybrid of having wide receiver-like skills on more of a tight end body. He's not as big a body as Cameron Latu, who has been a very favorite target of Bryce Young. I don't have the stats in front of me, but Latu has caught a lot of touchdowns this season for the Crimson Tide, because a lot of opponents have thought a lot about Jaleel Billingsley as well. And all of a sudden, number 81 is just standing over the B in Alabama in the end zone, and Bryce finds him pretty quickly for a touchdown. I do think the tight ends are going to have really good games. I thought they look good against Georgia. In the last matchup, we saw them have success against Cincinnati as well. And then Jamison Williams is still going to be that main target. And I still expect Alabama to try for the home run ball a lot with Jamison Williams in this game, because they saw that can work in the last matchup against Georgia. And you talk about all the things you can change in a rematch. You really can't change team speed and individual speed that much, even though I know Jordan Davis has stated, the defensive lineman for Georgia, that is excellent. He has stated he's in better condition going into this ball game than he was the last game, which I scratch my head at a little bit when he says that. But I think speed is going to be something that's similar to the last matchup, and the ability to get open for Alabama's wide receivers will be critical. I think Slade Bolden will have plenty of targets as well behind Williams and along with Billingsley and Latu. And then this young group of wide receivers, it's really exciting to see who could be stepping up, whether it's Ja'Cory Brooks, who caught the game-tying touchdown against Auburn, kind of a freshman moment that reminded a lot of people of Devontae Smith winning the national championship game on the touchdown from Tua on 2nd and 26 a few years ago against Georgia. Jai Hall has a lot of talent. This is JoJo Earl is a speedster, wears number 10. He is going to be one of the fastest players on the field. So Bryce Young has plenty of weapons. And the other thing to consider, too, is that he's had a month now to deal with the reality that John Mechie's not out there. He's had a lot of practices in Tuscaloosa. He's had a lot of time getting ready for the Cincinnati game, and now another week to get ready for this game. So I don't think it will be quite as much of a shock as probably it was for him in the second half against Georgia, not having Mechie after Mechie was already having a good game in the first half. Alabama's got a plan for what they want to do with their wide receiver core, and it looked pretty good last week against Cincinnati.
Yeah, a couple of future NFL tight ends in this game. Brock Bowers is the other. He had 10 catches for 140 yards against Bama in that first trip around the sun. He was really the one positive for Georgia on the offensive side of the football. They could not run it against Alabama that night. You just mentioned a minute ago, and I totally agree with you. Bill O'Brien, before him, Steve Sarkisian, before him, Lane Kiffin, they seemingly figure out ways to design their offensive game plans around their best players, and even when everybody's keying on them, they still get them the ball. So I'm with you. I expect Jameson Williams to have a big game tonight, but Georgia, they've got to run the football, Roger. They have to run the football. It can't just be Brock Bowers and a couple of those other wide receivers over there. They got to run it, and they couldn't do it the first time. Bama knows that. What have you learned about their strategy to stop it once again?
I think it starts with the big bodies up front. I think it starts with Darian Mathis just being a presence and a force, and he has continued to do that even since the Georgia game against Cincinnati. He was batting down passes at the line of scrimmage. Tim Smith's been playing really well, DJ Dale, and then just Will Anderson is a great run stopper. I think everyone talks about him pressuring the quarterback and what he can do pressuring passers, but, I mean, he stops the run as well as anybody in the SEC. So I agree. I think that's completely critical in this ball game for Georgia because Stetson Bennett, while he has had his moments this season and he has played well against the SEC East and he's played well against the Big Ten in Michigan, against an Alabama level defense, he doesn't fit the mold of quarterbacks that have had wins against Nick Saban coach teams. He doesn't fit that same mold of Deshaun Watson or Trevor Lawrence or Johnny Manziel, even backing it up a little bit further. He just can't extend plays like some of those guys can. And that's what you have to do as a quarterback. And even Zach Calzada had some good moments doing that earlier this season for for Texas A&M. And then TJ Finley from Auburn was able to find a little bit of success with that as well. But I just don't know if he can. Now, if he does, Georgia probably wins the national championship because that means he's able to get past his first read and really go down the field and have a good game like we've seen him have. But we've seen him struggle with the pressure. And that's why, to me, that running game is so critical because, again, if he gets in third and long situations, I think Georgia's going to have a really tough time. First of all, moving the chains. And then after that, you have the challenge of trying to score and especially score touchdowns.
From the Alabama perspective, would Georgia have a better chance with Daniels at quarterback than Bennett?
I'm not sure because there's so little JT Daniels kind of tape to go on from this year. And it's hard to figure out with how inconsistent he has been at that position. I certainly think Stetson Bennett's the best chance for Georgia to win this game and win this national championship because, again, we haven't seen much of Daniels. And that has been from kind of an outsider's perspective. I don't know what's led to all of the discussions in Georgia's complex throughout the last few years. But the fact that Georgia, even though Jake Fromm was a good quarterback, had his good moments, the fact that they haven't had that marquee signature quarterback like we've seen recently at Alabama or Clemson or any of the other programs that have had some success in getting to the playoffs the last few years, that's been, or like Ohio State, like it's been really puzzling how Georgia has had so much ups and downs and kind of inconsistency. I don't even know if that's the right word. Instability at times, it seems like, at the quarterback position, whereas all these other schools that are routinely getting the playoffs, you know who's going to be taking the ball. There are never really that many quarterback controversies.
You spent a bunch. We'll let you go here in just a second, Roger. We know you got better things to do than sit on the air with us, but you spent you spent time around Kirby. What do you think? And Will, for that matter. I mean, Will Muschamp is him and Nick Saban go way back. I don't know that you spend a lot of time around Coach Muschamp, but Kirby certainly. What have you learned? I mean, y'all, guys that know those guys. What have you learned? What would it mean to Kirby Smart as the head coach, to Coach Muschamp, and everything he's been through as a head coach and now as an assistant, to get this win for the Dogs over the greatest coach ever, and Nick Saban, probably the greatest stretch for a program ever in the history of the sport in Alabama? What do you think it would mean to those two?
I think it would mean a ton, just because it's their alma mater, first and foremost. I think whenever you're able to do that at a place where you wore the uniform, went to school, as they say in Georgia, walk through the arches when you graduate, I think it would mean the world to them for that reason alone. But especially to do it against Alabama, I know would be just the ultimate compliment to the kind of program they're building. Because let's face it, with all the talking heads that are out there in college football, say Georgia beat Michigan, and then Cincinnati upset Alabama, and then Georgia beat Cincinnati. There's still going to be that national narrative, 5, 10, 20 years down the road with, but if they had played Alabama, Georgia wouldn't have won that national championship, stuff like that. So I think if there ever was a time for Georgia to break through, if I put myself in a Georgia fan's shoes, I want it to be this one. You'd want to have that revenge, and you'd want it to be against Alabama with a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback playing at their best. And that's kind of the feeling I get from the Georgia fan base when I've been kind of traveling. And again, I was surrounded by red and black yesterday at Stegman Coliseum calling a basketball game against Georgia. So I think that would mean everything to them, but especially as well, considering how much Kirby has modeled the Georgia program after Alabama, it would be another sign that, that is the right way to do things, especially if you can beat Alabama. For a national championship, I think would mean everything to him. And even if Georgia loses this game, I really sincerely hope that there doesn't become talk of Kirby can't win the big one too much, because again, this is a program that is doing everything the right way. Recruiting rankings are either Georgia or Alabama, 1-2 each year. I have the feeling Georgia's going to break through eventually. Whether it's tonight, it remains to be seen. I think still down the road, it's going to take a marquee quarterback to maybe beat an Alabama or another power team like this, or if Clemson can get its act together and get back to this spot, which I know you don't want, JB, but we'll see. I get the feeling that, again, this program's doing all the right things. I think Kirby, even in a loss tonight, will stay steadfast to what he's built, because this foundation can't be any stronger than what he's got at Georgia. Now it's just making those 1 or 2 tweaks to get it to the top.
And the flip side of that, if Bama wins it again tonight, Roger, where would you put this one amongst all the others that have been won under Nick Saban?
I think this has got to go really high, mainly for the fact that everyone looked at last year saying, that was, as Coach Saban said, the ultimate team. They went undefeated playing an SEC-only schedule. They were able to replace a lot from the year ago. I mean, I had to answer on shows like this over and over again about, Mac taking the reins from Tua. And now everyone was like, I don't know if Bryce can do it for Mac. But I was like, wait a second, you guys even wanted Bryce to play over Mac last year when I was on similar shows. But, this group did not have it easy from the start. Played well against Miami. The Florida game got out to a big lead. It just seems like the term that Alabama fans love to use, joyless Saban murder ball, is how they've described this Crimson Tide, jumping out to like 35-0 leads in the first half against, top 25 teams. That's what they love to say on Twitter. This team hasn't done that as much this year. They got off to a good lead against Florida, like I was saying, and then, the Gators came back and made that a very stressful game down the stretch. And then they bounced back. They looked great against Ole Miss. You lose the game against A&M. And then after they picked up a good victory against Mississippi State, really struggled to put teams away, starting with the Tennessee game. LSU, Arkansas, and Auburn was the dramatic comeback and the comeback of comebacks. That may be the most loved Iron Bowl we've ever seen for Alabama fans. considering the comeback on a road in a place where Alabama hadn't won in 6 years. So for this group to beat Georgia not only once in the SEC championship game when no one gave them a shot, but if they could do it again twice, I think it would kind of be the ultimate trump card in the game of talking about, favorite teams, best teams. Like, what other stacks of cards could line up to something like that? I think it would be a very special championship for this group because they have been doubted and it is still a young team. And, a lot of these guys aren't going anywhere. Bryce Young and Will Anderson are going to be wearing Alabama jerseys again next year. So this has all the makings of a really special group that wants to be like some of the early teams in the Saban era that were able to win, back-to-back titles or 3 in a 4-year stretch. That's what this group wants to do. That's what Will Anderson has on his mind. And that's a scary thought for Georgia coming up tonight, knowing that Will Anderson's motivated by something like that.
Ooh, sure is. He is the best defensive player in college football. I think Bryce Young's the best offensive player. They're on the same team. It's amazing. Quickly, score tonight. Do you have a prediction?
I'm not great at predictions, even though I did kind of call the last game against Georgia. I've been telling people around the office, I was like, I think it's going to be at least 2 touchdowns, and it turned out to be 17 points. So kind of with that in mind, I do anticipate it being closer tonight. I will go Alabama 38,
wow,
Georgia 34.
Whoa! That would be right up the road, right up Darren's classic road.
I'll take it. That'll be fun. I mean, I think
we won a classic.
That'll be fun. What'd you say? 38, 35?
34.
34. I'm going to go 34. There are going to be some field goals. I mean, this mixed extra point maybe. I mean, something funny is going to happen.
Don't miss the extra point in the national championship game. You waited all year long. Roger, enjoy the game. It's going to be a fantastic experience tonight. Here's what I find fascinating. They're at Lucas Oil Stadium. It seats 67,000. Yeah, they squeeze about 110,000 into Bryant-Denny, and they squeeze about 95,000 into Sanford. So it won't be an intimidating atmosphere they've never been in. It's pretty regular here in the Southeastern Conference, but it certainly is the national championship. So for the sake of Roger Hoover and his trip home, I hope the Tide roll them tonight, my friend. Thank you so much for your time. We really look forward to having you back soon. It's been too long.
Sounds good, guys. Always enjoy coming on. All the best to you guys.
Later, all the best to you. Have a great day. If I could switch seats with someone tonight, it'd be Roger Hoover up there at Lucas Oil Stadium. So, all right, final time out of the afternoon when we return. Gene Sapakoff with the Post and Courier up next. Hopefully, you won't ever need legal help for a catastrophic injury or health issues from a medical drug or device. But if you or a loved one suffers injury or loss, Motley Rice LLC is a nationally recognized law firm that is right here in Mount Pleasant at 28 Ridgeside Boulevard. Thank you, Motley Rice, for sponsoring the JB and Goldwater Show and the Big Gamecock Preview Show. Visit motleyrice.com for more. motleyrice.com.
This is Mike Mazzell for Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road. You know what happens when you sell record numbers of new vehicles? That's right, we take in record numbers of local trades. Despite what the news is saying, quality pre-owned vehicles really aren't that hard to find. You just need to know where to look. Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate and on the web at stokesvw.com. We've got over 1,200 pre-owned cars, trucks, SUVs, and all at a fraction of the price when new. Every vehicle has been inspected and reconditioned, many with the balance of factory warranty. Best of all, at Stokes Volkswagen, you don't need perfect credit to get approved for a quality pre-owned vehicle. And we'll take any trade in any condition, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. Don't forget, we'll buy your car even if you don't buy a car from us. You're going to love our pre-owned selection, I guarantee it. So come see us today at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate or stokesvw.com.
Peace and love at Stokes VW.
Negative trade equity finance to new loan, subject to lender approval.
Wando Power Equipment, the trusted home of Hustler zero-turn residential and commercial mowers. There is nobody more trusted in South Carolina than our friends from Wando Power Equipment. They've been providing elite commercial and residential service for over 30 years. Landscape Services have turned to their selection of Hustler zero-turn mowers like the Raptor. Bigger, stronger, faster, and the most durable Raptor Hustler has ever designed. Located on Daniel Island and online at wandopower.com. Wando Power Equipment, owned by the Price family, the home of Hustler zero-turn mowers, rentals, service, and specializing in family and friendship.
Family vacations, a new car, a new boat, all cost money, but you don't necessarily have to make more to afford any of that if you can save cash that's flying out the window now. iHelp Consulting can help you finally get the kids to Disney World, upgrade the minivan, or drop that new boat in the water next summer. Let Daniel and iHelp Consulting consult with you. No fees, just savings. You pay them a percentage of those savings. Save on essential services, credit card fees, you name it. Let them find it. These folks are incredible. iHelpConsulting.com. How can I help you?
You hear me talk about Dog and Duck all the time, and there's no other place I'm going to watch my college and NFL than the Dog and Duck. They have 3 locations, Bell Hall, Park West, and Clements Ferry Road. They have specials all football season long, like $12 pitchers of their own D2 brew, $5 pints of Sierra Nevada, weekly pick'em sheets with prizes, and the best wings in town, bar none. For all your football, college, and NFL, the Dog and Duck, Clements Ferry Road, Bell Hall, and Park West.
You were listening to the JB and Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online.
Every time I hear that Dog and Duck spot, I hear bar none, a place that I ended many a nights in 5 Points in Columbia, South Carolina. iHelp Consulting can help you save money. If you hadn't figured that out, iHelpConsulting.com. If you own a business or know somebody that has, your uncle, your aunt, your brother, your sister, your mom, your dad, you, your friend, your neighbor, whatever, check the books with iHelpConsulting.com. It's free. It's free. And then if they find savings, then they charge you. That's what a good company will do. That's a good company run by Daniel Owens. iHelp Consulting. How can I help you? Ask yourself that question. How can I help you? iHelpConsulting.com. This guy helps us every week. Gene Sapakoff with the Post and Courier on a national championship Monday. Gene, if you were college football commissioner, would you move this game to a Saturday night, please?
Please.
Yeah, I think I would. And that would be fun. They can't be scared of the NFL or anything else. People going out to eat. Believe me, these are very carefully calculated decisions that they make. I mean, I've been out to Grapevine, Texas at college football playoff headquarters. I know Bill Hancock pretty well, the executive director, and every little thing, including what sort of furniture is in the rooms where they host coaches and host media and everything, is really carefully planned. But yeah, I like that idea.
I'll tell you what else was very carefully planned. When both teams landed in Indianapolis, they didn't plan the snow, but it ended up working out just from a visual perspective. And then they're interviewing ESPN as both coaches as they get off their Delta planes, which is front and center, as big as could possibly be behind both of them. I'd like to know how much that partnership between Delta and the playoff is.
Yeah, you know that so much that wasn't an accident. As far as the weather goes and the site and everything, I'm a little torn. I mean, on the one hand, conventional bowl sites, or particularly in the South, might be better, but I like spreading it around. And as weird as it was to have, for instance, the 2018 game in Santa Clara, California, and you could get tickets to that game pretty easily. It looked like it might rain. It didn't really, but this game kind of in an unusual spot, I think. But hey, move it around. Have it in the Fargo Dome one year.
Oh, well, we kind of just mentioned that. We were just talking to Roger Hoover, who's up there in Indianapolis. 67,000. So let's say 70,000 will be in there tonight. That is nothing to these teams. Alabama regularly plays in front of 100 plus at Bryant Denny, and Georgia 90 plus in Athens. So that's no big deal. You mentioned Mr. Hancock a minute ago, who I've had on my show before as well. He is speaking right now because nothing has come to fruition as far as the college football playoff goes in expansion. They've been meeting in Indianapolis, and they're not even near unanimous. So they will not be moving forward with expansion at this time. Hancock has said we're going to go into overtime on this one. Talked about bowl issues still remaining, the automatic qualifier status. The timing isn't right for some college football playoff conference commissioners, presidents, things like that. Gene, do you think we'll get anything even this year, maybe 2022? Do you think this college football playoff expansion model will get resolved this year?
I do. I think that I've talked to some commissioners and several athletic directors, some of them pretty powerful in this. And I think The question is between 8 and 12. Most people think it's probably going to be 12 with some first round buys. And then the big thing is, like you said there, Jamie, the automatic qualifiers versus more at large teams. Like the SEC obviously wants the more at large teams as possible, and the group of 5 they want in, and I just think this can be done, especially when you go to 12. So, but then the next big question is when, and that's why Bill Hancock's talking about going into overtime, because he has said for about 18 months now that if you want this to happen by 2024, you need to get this done in January. I think that could stretch out a little farther, but I think it's going to happen. It just has to happen. You cannot have a quote unquote national sport with a national tournament and just make it where entire swaths of the country are eliminated by Halloween.
Yep. It's a great point. Yeah, it'll be interesting to follow along, Gene. We won't get too wrapped up in that today. We'll have plenty of time here in the off season to discuss the future of the college football playoff. But tonight, the final game of the season will play between the Dogs and the Tide. So, Gene, you've seen enough of both of these squads this year. If both of them bring their A game tonight, who wins?
First of all, when you talk about the squads, you're talking about everybody from the ball boy to the kicker and the holder. So the squads include the coaching staff, and I think if everybody brings their A game, Alabama wins a close one, like 30-27 in overtime. Nick Saban just cannot be underestimated. And in these games, he's been at his absolute best. Yeah, they've had some blowouts. They have. But the onside kick against Clemson in 2015 was brilliantly executed, but it was wide open. It was there, and he pulled it at just the right moment. And if they don't get that, maybe Clemson has 3 national titles. And maybe we think differently a little bit of Saban, a little bit. Like the difference between the best coach in college football history and the best coach in sports history, maybe just that. But then, remember the 2017 game, obviously against Georgia in the Mercedes-Benz Dome, he pulls Jalen Hurts for this Tua kid. What's he doing? And the game's won because of that decision.
What does all of that speak to? Like, what is it about Saban that has created this monster?
He studies the hell out of great leaders, great coaches, puts more time into this than anybody else. And while all these coaches, and I mean, Jamie, you and me and Darren, we love high school coaches and how hard they work and so forth, and not just in football and all the sports, but Nick Saban has set the standard for work ethic in college football for head coaches and staff. And I laugh because I've talked to many people that have worked for Saban on his staff, and he burns those guys out. He works so hard, but the result is 7 national championships.
And if he wins 8 national championships, all right. So let me back up. When you compare, and everybody does it, when you compare Nick Saban to Bear Bryant, how would you compare those two? Who, I don't know if you compare one as a better coach or how would you compare those two coaches?
It's really hard. There's so many differences. You almost have to make an off the field cultural type thing. I mean, most of Bear Bryant's success was in a segregated era. He did adjust and win in an integrated era too, though. And but I think Saban has had to deal with a much more competitive environment, and it's harder to win in the playoff system too. When you could, you're theoretically playing an SEC championship game, a semifinal game, and a championship game. That's 3 chances to lose on the big stage. Bear Bryant never had to be worrying about being eliminated in an SEC championship game, etc. And I just think Nick Saban has had to deal with a lot more distractions, and just the relative competition is tougher. So I lean toward him, but Bear Bryant certainly set a standard. And again, that adjusting from segregated to integrated, a lot of really famous coaches in different sports weren't able to do that, and he was.
That's probably the fairest response I've actually ever heard to that, because most people just compare wins and losses, championships to championships. Everything is kind of apples to oranges. You're talking about different eras, different players. I mean, I'd venture a guess that the type of athlete that plays now, Gene, and the type of athlete that played in 1960, this team would probably kick that team's rear end. It's just different. It's just different eras of athlete. I mean, it is what it is. But you have to talk about the coaches and the players in which the era they participate in. That's the only way to have the conversation fairly. And I think you've done that. Is that appropriate?
Yeah, that's appropriate. But when you, Jamie, get to this high level of stuff, I mean, you're talking about guys like, say, Bill Walsh, Vince Lombardi, and Bill Belichick, and you're looking at things like innovation, and in the NFL, how innovative, for instance, somebody like Paul Brown was. Well, in this case, I'm looking at just overall impact, and you look at the coaching tree that both those guys have had, and it's just incredible, absolutely incredible. But like I said, you can't not look at the cultural stuff. Bear Bryant, a lot of people know about that Southern Cal game in Birmingham when Sam Bam Cunningham ran all over Alabama, and people say that Sam Cunningham did more for, race relations and diversity in the South than anybody. But remember, Bear Bryant scheduled that game, and he used to go and watch the Birmingham AA team in baseball, and they were run by the Oakland A's, and they had black players like Reggie Jackson and Blue Moon Odom and guys like that come through there, and he would go and quietly watch and see how the crowd was reacting to that. And I think had a lot more to do with integration in sports in the South than people say. And he's been taken to task by Frank DeFord and Sports Illustrated years ago and others for not doing more. But subtly, I think he did do a lot.
Gene Sapakoff, 151 on a Monday afternoon. Fascinating history. I don't even know if you say stuff like that on the Feinbaum show. I think Paul should be jealous of what we've gotten here today on this.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my point. Thank you, Gene. I really see. We know where your loyalty lies. This is awesome. So Bear won 6 national championships at Bama. Saban has won 6 at Bama, but he's won 7 overall. This would be his 8th, and that would be amazing. I guess that'd be the most ever. He's probably going to fill up both hands and then retire. Maybe, who knows? Maybe he won't retire. Kirby's searching for number 1. And Gene, this is so fascinating to me, because Darren and I probably had this conversation 3 or 4 times in the last week now of all the things that go into the game, right? You've got the best player on the offensive side of the football. Well, the best player in the country. He won the Heisman, Bryce Young, who plays for Bama. You have the best defense in the country. That's Georgia. It didn't look like it the first time around against Bama, but things change. I think you have the best defensive player in the country on the Alabama defense. You have probably 3 of the top 10 best defensive minds in all of college football on the Georgia sideline in Lanning, Muschamp, and Smart. But if you took, if everything was the same, this is the 3rd time I've said this today, so I want to get your response. Bama's an underdog in the game, but it kind of feels like Georgia is because of Saban. But if Saban wasn't the coach and everything else was the same for Alabama, results, roster, players, everything they've had, but it wasn't Nick Saban as the coach, I don't even know there'd be up for much debate in this game. I think everybody'd say, oh, well, Georgia's going to win.
Yeah, I agree. I'd have Georgia by a solid touchdown, and I think the Las Vegas money would be pouring in there and drive the spread up a little bit. But not only is Saban on the other sideline, but Kirby Smart has yet to win a national title, and so you have to factor that in. I mean, once you win one, you kind of know that you can do it, and that goes in every sport, from little kids soccer to, the NFL or the World Series or whatever. But until he kind of does that, and obviously he's won a lot of huge games to get to 2 national championship games like he has, but it's not just Saban, the Saban factor, it's the Kirby hasn't won factor. So we'll see.
If Georgia wins, how does that change things, or does it change things in the SEC?
I think Dog Nation is going to think that it's the changing of the guard in the SEC, and not with the snap of the fingers necessarily. And believe me, there will be no more respectful person after the game than Kirby Smart of Alabama. But now suddenly you'll start to say, geez, Saban's 70, Kirby Smart's finally won one. Where do you look at as the best program in the next 5 to 7 year window? You'd probably point to Georgia. In fact, you'd be crazy not to. So that is probably what we'd be looking at. If not the changing of the guard, the beginning of the changing of the guard, and probably a Georgia-Alabama SEC championship series for about the next 3 years or as long as Saban stays there.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, if Alabama wins it again, back to back, Gene, which would be the first time they've gone back to back in almost a decade. It's amazing. 11-12 back to back, and here we are, 21-22, looking to do that again. If they win another national championship, what will that tell you about the future of the SEC and about the future of the college football playoff even?
I mean, the future of the SEC, it's crazy to say, but has never been better. And a big reason is the strange, wacky, ruthless Greg Sankey coup of getting Oklahoma and Texas to come in. And yeah, they're relatively speaking kind of down in the sport that we care about the most around here, but there's a lot of other sports that Oklahoma and Texas are really good in.
Yeah.
And I think that is an amazing thing. And I think something you're going to see, you talked about going to, an expanded playoff system. There's going to be some exciting announcements coming out of the SEC in 2022 also, including, I think, probably the layout of some kind of a pod system for a replacement for the two divisions.
Is this a good thing for college football that we've got a rematch tonight, that it's Georgia and Alabama?
That's a really good question. And the answer is no, it's not. I mean, first of all, it's not such a good thing to have just two teams. And if you're going to, you don't want them to be from border states. I think it would be a lot better if it was an 8-team playoff in which we regularly saw some West Coast team play some Northeast team and a Midwest team in there against the Southern team, and mixing it around with, you always want your 2, 3, or 4 powerhouses, but you don't want the same teams because, again, entire parts of the country, and I don't mean just little parts, but huge regions just aren't that interested.
Yeah.
I'm, not that this is what y'all are saying, but it's up to them. I mean, Michigan had their chance. So Ohio State, everybody's had their chance, and they couldn't get it done. I hear you. I don't necessarily disagree with it. I'm really fascinated by the games. I think they're the two best teams in the sport. But the rest of the country, if they don't want to see it, then I don't know. They need to beat them, right?
I agree with that to the extent that, Alabama, Georgia, the SEC, and a few ACC teams, Clemson obviously being the most prominent one, care more and try harder and get better players and all that. That part I agree with. But the fact that it's just a 4-team playoff is just a little weird. And I think at least, you had blowouts in the first round, but you wouldn't be having, Alabama and Georgia necessarily even in the first round. They would have byes. So you'd have a Pac-12 team and, a team from the Big 12 actually in this tournament. And I think it would stir a little bit more interest, at least in the playoff, if not in the championship game.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there's any message that this sends, if there's any message at all that this sends across the country, if you're Pac-12, if you're Big 12, if you're Big 10, if you're ACC, everybody, that those who might have been on the edge or on the fence about expanding or not expanding, here's a reason to do it. I mean, honestly, here's a reason to not saying that it couldn't just be two SEC teams again, even with 100 teams in a playoff. But I'm just saying, if there are more chances for in an expanded playoff, there's going to be more SEC teams that get in there. I get that. But in an expanded playoff, there will also be more opportunities for them to lose. And right now, those opportunities, there's only 2. That's it. And so we'll see. Who wins, Gene?
I like Alabama in a really close game, maybe even something in overtime, about 30-27.
Ooh. Didn't we already get a 30-27, Darren? Was that Wes earlier?
It could have been. I know all 3 predictions we've gotten have been over, and they've been about 3 or 4 points in favor of Alabama, and good games. I hope all you guys are right, even though I bet on Georgia.
How much rat poison do you think Saban's throwing at his team today?
All kinds. I mean, he's digging it up all over the place. Yeah, you guys, that was a fluke in Atlanta. You don't belong here. I don't know why. I have no idea how we beat the Cincinnati Bearcats.
Here we go. Will Muschamp, 1 year removed from being South Carolina's head coach, could be a national champion tonight for all those out there.
And he's earned it, because I mean, I remember talking to Kirby Smart early in the season, and he was saying how valuable Will Muschamp had been to the team, going from an off the field analyst to an on the field coach, and that's a huge plus.
I agree. Hey, a lot of people aren't happy, obviously, with what he did at South Carolina and things of that nature, Gene, but I will contend to this day and for a long, long time that he's still one of the best defensive coaches in college football. And if you have a chance to hire him as your defensive coordinator, you hire him as your defensive coordinator. I have that much respect for Will Muschamp as a coach, but didn't work out as the head coach of the Gators or the Gamecocks. You always work out. We literally spent the whole day on the national championship. I wanted to dabble in some NFL stuff with you, but tonight's game is going to be a lot of fun. We'll get to all that next week and more, Gene, some hoop stuff and things of that nature. What are we looking for in the Post and Courier this week? There have been some wonderful pieces, by the way, the last couple of weeks that y'all have done. And I wanted to let you know, I've just thoroughly, not that we don't always enjoy reading the Post and Courier, but the last couple of weeks, you, David, John Blau, everybody's had just a bunch of great stuff in there. So thank you so much for the new year content. It's been wonderful.
Well, I appreciate that. And among the things this week that I will have is talking to former Braves outfielder, current Braves analyst, and former Clemson football signee, Jeff Francoeur, who will be speaking at the River Dogs Hot Stove Banquet on Friday night. But I got him talking about Clemson, and he signed to play linebacker when Tommy Bowden was the coach, but then decided not to go to Clemson when he became a first-round draft pick of the Atlanta Braves, which I think was a good decision for Jeff and his family and you know, his grandchildren eventually. But he's talking about why Dabo Swinney does not welcome Jeff Francoeur at any sort of postseason game involving Clemson. And it has to do with Jeff Francoeur showing up at two of the national championship games that Alabama and LSU pummeled Clemson in, or beat Clemson in. So he's no longer welcome. But anyway, he has a lot of good stuff to say and interesting things to say about Clemson football, among other sports things.
Really looking forward to that. Anybody that can get to see him on Friday night I don't know if it's sold out or not yet, but that would be awesome. Jeff Francoeur is awesome. So that'll be wonderful. The Carry-On Joiner column was beyond special, and a great piece on Andy Solomon too, now leading the South Carolina Athletics Hall of Fame. Gene, thank you so much. Enjoy the game tonight. Have a wonderful week. Talk to you next week.
Thanks for having me on.
See you.
There you go, Gene Sapakoff, 7-time Sports Writer of the Year with the Post and Courier. For those interested, you Carolina fans, Devonnie Reed has committed to the South Carolina football program, safety out of Central Michigan. He is the second of three to publicly announce, including the defensive end from NC State this past weekend. I will give all you a little bit of a hint, though. He is not the guy who committed today. He committed over the weekend to South Carolina. And the third one today, I saw somebody on the message board on our board earlier speculating it is not who you speculated either. So hopefully that'll be out by tomorrow, and we'll be able to talk about that. Enjoy the game tonight. The Tide win. Darren?
I got Georgia. My money is on Georgia. I made that bet during the show.
30-27. Bama wins. Field goal.
Going under. I'm going 24-21 Georgia. They cover by half a point.
I like that. Low scoring first half, higher scoring second half. We're back tomorrow at noon. See you then.